Hello, everyone. I'm Troy Vossler, co-founder of gener8tor. This is the gener8tor Founder Series Spotlight, and today it is my sincere honor to have Daniel Rotman, the founder and CEO of PrettyLitter, joining us today.
Mhm.
So, Daniel, please just give a little introduction of yourself, like a little bit of your background, and then from there, would love to transition into what was the genesis of PrettyLitter. And I know there's like a really cool story with some of your early business partners and ABC Family Show and the Drapers and all that. So, would love to get a little background on you as a person, as an entrepreneur, and then the genesis story behind PrettyLitter.
Awesome. Happy to do so. My background, I think, when it comes to entrepreneurship, like many entrepreneurs, is tied to family. In that I'm a first generation American. I watched my parents build small mom and pop business from the ground up. I never knew a different way other than watching them try to build something. It's actually manifested itself in every attempt I ever made to work for somebody. I was a good employee, but I wasn't ever truly and deeply satisfied when I always saw within an organization ways that I would have wanted to apply my creativity or leadership things, ego-driven things that often led me within businesses to be like, I am like itching to do my own thing. Um, and so I did a couple of jaunts growing up. I was a poli-sci background. I studied politics as an undergrad. I studied public policy in grad school. But even with that kind of public sector background, I started my first business at 22, and we were doing grassroots organizing in our community in Los Angeles. And that was a kind of homegrown operation that grew to hundreds of employees. And so that was a really great first entree into entrepreneurship for me. And I surrounded myself always with advisors, people that could help me figure out whatever it is, what industry, what sector I was interested in. So at the time, I was working for a grassroots org that was contracted by the Democratic National Committee. And having learned grassroots organizing through them, that's when I started my first grassroots organizing for the homeless services community using the tools that I learned from the DNC and then asking people at the DNC to act as advisors to me so that I could then figure out how to do it on my own. So that was like my first big thing. And then I went to grad school from there. And then after I finished grad school, I returned back into entrepreneurship through a great unforeseen random road that took me into the kitty litter business, which like in looking back when I was first going to grad school and realizing that at the time I decided I didn't want to live a life in public service from the perspective of being either a politician or in public policy. Just at that time, it just wasn't where like my real passion was. Um, I was working on a bunch of random different ideas that I had. And then, in a really great turn of events, I got contacted by a friend who said that she was interested in building out an idea within a television show that she was going to be on ABC Family, which is now called Freeform. That's the name of the network. And it was under the tutelage of a really great venture capitalist named Tim Draper. And he had this very real kind of incubator program called Draper U. And he made a relationship with ABC Family to say, hey, let's make like a television show out of this and make it like Shark Tank meets Big Brother. It's like, we'll follow these entrepreneurs for a season, where they live, how they interact with one another, and then ultimately there'll be a big pitch in front of some Silicon Valley judges, and we'll hand out some cash to those that we think should be the winners of these things. And so she reached out to me and said, listen, her name was Carly. She's phenomenal. She was a pet blogger at the time. And she said, listen, I'm going to be on this show. I want to build out an idea. And so, would you be interested in joining me on this show and us figuring this thing out together? Um, Carly had experience with cats. Carly herself was an avid pet lover and she understood the pain points around cat ownership. And ultimately, it led to the creation of PrettyLitter, the health monitoring cat litter that changes colors to tell you if your cat is sick. We went through the program. This is back in 2015. And they kind of separated these like 30 or so entrepreneurs into like B2B and B2C. And we were in the B2C category and we were one of the winners and received a massive $50,000 check from Tim Draper. I mean, at the time, that was a lot of money. Um, just enough though to kind of seed the business. And so shortly that was over, um, the the program was going to air in 6 months. We had 6 months to basically, we won on a deck. We created a deck for Tim and these judges, but we hadn't kind of built anything. There was no proof of concept yet. It was really just kind of research and kind of a go-to-market strategy, but all the work still needed to be done. And Carly, and I had a discussion about kind of where she wanted to go next with her career. And ultimately, she decided it was better for her to focus on some other things that she was passionate about at the time. And so I was kind of there on my own in my apartment with like a deck and a $50,000 check to really get this business started and off the ground. And so that became kind of the inception of Pretty Litter. So anything that I was focused on prior to that, like went to the wayside. I like said, no, seems like too great of an opportunity for me to not be solely and fully focused on. We got to launch on a television show. There's a little bit of seed funding. There's this great guy named Tim Draper that I kind of ride his coattails. Let's do this. So I would say some luck, being kind of open to the universe and timing, and a little bit of like family DNA, entrepreneurship, and the blood kind of all came together to make that moment happen.
That's awesome. I love hearing that story. And then I know we connected the generator kind of sphere here through Kate Evinger, who was an intern at the time, and we had assigned her like pet as like a theme to go after to recruit either for office hours or applications. And then this was for our Generator Milwaukee 2016 program. And then I know we had a series of interviews, and then my claim to fame is I was always Team Daniel. I was like, we need to invest in this guy, and Joe was dragging his feet and saying, "Oh, pets, how big of an industry could that be?" And so I was like, that's my little claim to fame. I was with you all the way, Daniel.
All the
Uh,
way, dude. You're the man. And we
uh,
still give Joe crap till this
I
day
still give him crap.
because
I
it's
still
like,
give him,
bro, what were
bro.
you,
What were you
what
thinking?
were you thinking,
I
bro?
know, I know.
By the way, kudos real quickly to Generator because I had considered at that time, should I be in an accelerator program? Does it make sense? And I was really thinking about it, but then I got this outreach from Generator. And then what I was, I think I shared this with you, Troy, but one of the things about Generator that I was really interested in is at the time, like you had a couple of pretty successful subscription businesses that you guys had backed and helped mentor along the way. And Pretty Litter had just pivoted into being a subscription business. I mean, it was really still within the first 6 months of its life, Pretty Litter. And that was like really an amazing draw for me. And obviously really, really important that I did it. It was a really amazing experience, but we could talk more about the generator
Yeah, I
stuff.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Some just kind of more boilerplate questions, but I always like to ask founders, what was the biggest challenge you faced as a founder? Whether it was starting the business, growing the business, going through an exit. So what was the biggest challenge and how did you overcome it?
There's a few things. I mean, one, there's positions of recognizing that being in a category that some might consider unsexy, and you're living in LA, which I was living at the time, and everyone around me was like in beauty and shoes and drones and security and aerospace and all this stuff. And you're sitting there being like, pitching a kitty litter business. And there was like moments there where you really have to set aside and push through, knowing that you're gonna have to walk into every single room, whether that be a room for investors or a room for advisors, and most importantly, recruiting employees. And I always know that I'm kind of walking in with a uh, like a brand conception deficit, if you will, meaning kitty litter. Kind of, it's always that kind of like kitty litter. You know what I mean? And there are many businesses in America where entrepreneurs and founders have made generational wealth by doing things that are in the kind of boring, unsexy spaces, but are kind of ripe for disruption. So one of the biggest challenges, which ultimately became one of, I think, Pretty Litter's largest strengths, was always knowing that like I had to walk into every room and convince people that they need to open their eyes and look at this kind of really amazing category that really needed support. Um, and being branded like the kitty litter guy, it's like you kind of let that ego stuff aside and you kind of like lean in to the passion and the mission of what you're doing. And then eventually what ended up happening is then Pretty Litter became like the super sexy hot company in LA where like all these VCs and all these great employees from some of these like really name brands, subscription and consumer brands, like really wanted to work for us. It's like an amazing, beautiful turn of events over time. But so there's the challenge of in a way, like Troy, the best way I could say it is, and it really is about the personality of the founder and what your comfort levels are. But I think there is a strength to ignoring kind of a lot of the noise that surrounds venture capital and wanting to make a statement and a name as a founder for what like your business is. When I had founder friends who were like, look, we just raised 20 to 50 to $100 million, kind of little kind of caveat for a second. Certain businesses require that, right? Like the capital investment for certain businesses, like you don't have the luxury of not having to raise a lot of money. Pretty Litter didn't necessarily have those capital costs, so we were able to kind of be lean and mean. So if you have to raise a bunch of money, that's important. And certainly from an accelerator perspective, that's a major part of what you guys do. But what I'm trying to say is that when I heard my friends like, yo, I raised a bunch of money and now we have like a really awesome office in Venice Beach and we just hit our 100th employee and I just added Sequoia to my board. Like what I hear when I hear that stuff is now you have you have shorter runway. You have more voices on your cap table that can influence the ultimate exit and decision of your company. There is more responsibility now on your shoulders. And that never felt comfortable to me. So I think one of the challenges, but ultimately leads to the biggest strength of an entrepreneur is like really listening to who they are instinctively. Like know what your comfort zone is, know who you are in your DNA in terms of the kind of company you want to build for yourself and stick to it. And if that means you don't get in your own way, like put ego to the side, put pressures from people who are interested in your company and telling you the way it should be, you gotta kind of be like those horses in Central Park that just like put those blinders on and kind of really kind of stay focused to what the mission of your business is. So my biggest challenge turned into my biggest strength, I think.
I think that's so spot on. Just like the whole notion of the more you raise, the more you bring all this like sexiness to it, the new office, the employees, the board. It also is kind of increasing the threshold or the bar on what an exit could look like. Now, ironically, you had a tremendous exit that would have overcome all those issues. But I also think there's some elegance in how can you be capital efficient? How can you raise, just the right amount of money, not raising too much, not raising too little.
Exactly.
And for if you're willing to share, like how much did you raise? Not a lot.
$1 million.
Yeah,
It was a
insane.
million dollar seed round. But in retrospect, Troy, there's also a little bit of good fortune, right? To your point,
Hmm.
raise what you need. But in retrospect, there's no doubt Pretty Litter was profitable from the beginning. But when I say profitable, like 50,000 one year, 150,000 the next year, like any kind of massive environmental event, like I don't know, COVID, could really like throw you completely out of whack. For example, with COVID, we got very fortunate. Pet was a category that benefited from people who were hunkering down at home and didn't want to go to the grocery store. People were like buying litter like they were hoarding toilet paper during COVID. It was crazy. So like you would go to Walmart and you literally like the litter aisle was empty. So here was like this D2C will ship to your home, pets, people were adopting pets at rapid rates during COVID. So it benefited us. However, friends of mine that were in the travel space that had started their own companies, like they suffered. So in retrospect, had I been in a category that wouldn't have been beneficial during COVID, I would have been in real trouble because I didn't raise enough to create that safety net that I ultimately would have needed. So there was definitely a bit of luck there. But I do think that raising what you need, but not necessarily more than that, I think is really important. And by the way, there's always, if your business is growing, there's other opportunities for capital. You could always get, lines of credit, venture debt, if that's available to you out there. And that was always, an interesting option to us as well.
Yeah.
But yeah,
The other point you made, you mentioned you would walk into a room, and I remember experiencing this with you, where kitty litter, like how that's not venture backable or blah blah blah.
Joe, hello,
Joe,
Joe.
man,
I walked into Generator, and even the boys at Generator were like, like that's the story of my life of pitching Pretty Litter,
yeah,
and it's just like you know what they need to know, so just stick with what the messages that needs to be delivered, and don't be discouraged by people because it's not people. No, people aren't like they don't they just need to understand. Like a lot
yeah,
of people just need to be educated on what it is that you're trying to make a difference in. And cat
yeah.
was one of those categories. Sorry, Troy, to go on a little tangent here, but I think one of the other things that's like really interesting and important about why I think Pretty Litter worked is, it's a community of consumers that were like underrepresented. The money was there, but culturally underrepresented. And I think that that was like a really kind of interesting learning that I didn't walk into building this company understanding or knowing. But at the end of the day, it's like, oh yeah, like my personal experience as a founder, watching VCs and advisors in the beginning being like, Like, kitty litter sounds like a lifestyle business. Hopefully you can make some money and kind of live off of it, but like, who gives a shit? Despite the
Mhm.
fact that at the time it was a $2 billion market in the US. Today it's 4 billion, not to mention another 6 to 8 billion in food, not to mention accessories and all these things. But anyway, so even though the money was there, people often looked at the idea as unsexy and also the category as like, I'm a dog guy. Like that was always, I'm a dog. Cat is for the crazy cat lady, and dog is like a man's best friend, right? And you even saw that in venture capital with like Farmer's Dog and Ollie and Nom Nom Now and Fresh Pet, like all this money and resources going into dog. Now, granted, as a category, it's a larger market, but in reality, there's more cats in America than there are. There's almost 100 million cats compared to about 85 million dogs. And then that was before Taylor, and all these other celebrities are like obsessed with their cats. And so I kind of walked into a category and I recognized there was like a yearning, like there was like a real yearning for cat owners to like, we're sick of like hearing everybody be like, oh, by the way, only 5% of the US population is actually allergic to cats, but yet it seems like 50% of the population, because every time someone walked into my house, like, oh, I'm allergic to cats, I'm a dog guy, all that shit. And the reason that that's annoying is because it's also a feeling that consumers have as cat owners, where they get kind of looked down upon. So creating a product that was kind of innovative and premium and cool, um, it informed our marketing. Like it informed how to reach the customer and communicate to them in a way that kind of moved them to feel like this is a brand we want to get behind. So it's just the long story short, what the thread I'm pulling together is that what I experienced as a founder from pitching my company to people who kind of like looked down on it in the beginning actually was an allegory to how consumers felt as cat owners, to how people treated them in America. And I should have picked up on that even quicker, because ultimately I was able to kind of feed them what they needed in terms of feeling kind of cool. And then luckily Taylor Swift and everybody later, it became like the whole like all their celebrities are now obsessed with their cats. But when we started, there was no noise about cats at all. We were
Yeah.
the first D2C kitty litter in America. And now there's several.
And now you've been spoofed on Saturday Night Live 3 times.
We've been spoofed on We've reached our cultural milestones. We've been spoofed on SNL. For those who haven't seen it, the episode with Matt Damon a couple of weeks ago, they spoofed us, and that is a follow-up from Matt last appearance of Matt Damon 7 years ago, where he did something called Glitter Litter. There's also a movie that spoofed us with Kristen Wiig called who knows, Gabby's Dollhouse. I think that just came out last year. That whole thing, Pretty Litter, was a spoof on us. So it's cool. It's cool to see where it's come.
It's very cool. The other thing I was going to say is no matter what you're doing, no matter what your product, service, industry is, the other thing I find is that growth and traction and revenue cure all ills. And, I saw it firsthand. I remember, I think it was, end of summer or no, excuse me, fall 2026. When we had our premiere night showcase event in Milwaukee. And I remember that's when you really started to hit that hockey stick growth. I remember you even had a chart on stage just showing like what that month over month growth looked like. And it was just taking off tremendously. And I think that also changed investors' tune. So before, an investor who's like, oh, kitty litter, that doesn't seem interesting, or that's not a big enough category. As soon as they started to see that growth, I
Yeah.
think that's when they really tuned in. And so my advice to founders, my joke is like, I'll sit and do office hours or review applications, and I become almost like immune or, almost I don't really care what the product or service is, but like prove to me the analogy I always use is prove to me that the dog will eat the dog food.
Right.
And in your case, you started to hit that growth, and then I think you would experience how you were treated differently as a result of that
Um,
traction.
to 100%. That's a really, thank you for taking me back there from a memory perspective, because that was a crazy moment and it happened within gener8tor. When I started gener8tor, I think we were doing like, I don't know, I think it was like 20,000 a month. I really got to look back. I think it was like 20,000 a month. And by the time we were done with gener8tor, I think we had picked up something like $500,000 in growth in like the last 2 months of the program, something crazy. And that difference between starting gener8tor, and I remember we did, I don't know if gener8tor still does this, but we had, was it like the mentor swarm or like the
Yeah.
where you go and you get to meet all these mentors. And I remember like in the beginning being like wanting to be like that fun, cool, popular company within the cohort and watching again like mentors and advisors and investors being like, I don't get it, or I got to figure this thing out a little bit more. But then boom, dude, within gener8tor, with a lot of love and credit to gener8tor, because some of that growth that happened was directly connected to the mentorship I got from Joe and Troy and the whole crew over there. Which really helped me figure out my subscription game. So again, that's why I have so much love for gener8tor. But when that transition happened, all of a sudden you could feel I felt the energy shift. And then when that night came during the demo day and that pitch day, and we kind of did our thing, like we were kind of like the hot shit of the night. And I remember like all that energy. But that again is another thing that I think is important for entrepreneurs to remember, which is like business is going to be up, business is going to be down, like having like kind of an emotionally level head about things. It's again, I keep coming back to it, but I think that not getting in your own way and like the ego side of things. It's just like you're going to be hot, and then there's going to be moments where you're really not, and you got to know that that's going to come. So if you kind of just have like a steady state in terms of your mentality, like I'm here to do my work. I'm going to be polite. I'm going to be good. I'm going to like meet people. I'm going to try to network. And, but like, no matter whether someone's excited or like just wants to dismiss my business, it doesn't even matter. Like, I know, like I know what I'm trying to do here, and just like brick by brick, it's kind of the
Yeah.
vibe.
Daniel, what's one thing you wish you learned sooner as a founder?
I'll start with recruitment. Um, I really wanted as much as I could just because of how labor intensive and emotionally intensive it is. I really wanted to outsource recruiting. It was just like I had this dream that like I could hire someone that would be responsible, whether it's like a people or culture or HR person for our recruiting. And it just happened to be because of the category I was in, which an unsexy business. And knowing that I wanted to recruit people who were most of them gainfully employed. Because in the world of like D2C subscription performance marketing, like the best marketers, generally speaking, are, at least in LA, like they're gonna probably have jobs already. And so I had to poach. Those attempts to outsource that work always failed. It was only until like I personally took over recruiting. And that literally meant like spending an hour and a half every single day. It was in my calendar. It was blocked for 90 minutes every single day, like a politician doing fundraising calls, 90 minutes a day. At 90 minutes a day, I was reaching out to people on LinkedIn, and I did it as the founder. Um, and that carried a bit more interest and weight to potential people that you wanted to recruit to join your company. And it worked. And I wish I had known that and worked a little harder at that kind of earlier on. But at the end of the day, we recruited the right people. Separately, I think some interesting learnings. Also talking with some of my other founder friends who were like kind of similar in their growth trajectory, you kind of hit these ceilings and revenue. It's not like, black and white. It's like a lot of gray. But generally speaking, I remember one of my advisors even telling me, and boy, he ended up being spot on. He said to me, when you get to 1 million a month in recurring revenue, you're going to see your CPAs kind of jump aggressively, and you're going to have to figure out like your next game plan in terms of how to get your CPAs down and how to reach that next circle of customers. And it almost happened like that, like clockwork. Like our CPAs were super efficient. We were growing, and then we hit 1 million a month. I think around the $50 million in revenue, there was like another ceiling that we hit, and that was more on the operational side, where I realized that we were understaffed and that we didn't have the right infrastructure and tools set up to handle our supply chain. So like there's like these ceilings that I guess you have to go through it to learn. But in retrospect, I wish I had planned for a little better, because that wisdom was out there in the ecosystem of people who were trying to help me. And obviously all I cared about was just the next brick. So to think about that, but in retrospect, there was a little bit of like, oh shit, like I got to fix this really quickly. And that would have saved me some stress.
Yeah.
Advisors, I think ultimately, Troy, if you don't have like this massive board, which I did not want, I think it's really important to surround yourself with wisdom, like wise people that you can pick up the phone and call to be very vulnerable and honest with. One thing I'll give myself some peace and credit for was like I was vulnerable with my advisors. Like I was always honest. I wasn't interested in like showcasing like that everything was always good. Like I was willing to be like I need help. I don't know how to figure this thing out. Like, how do I push through this? I'm feeling a little stressed. Like, I was honest, and like that honesty allowed them to develop a bond with me and to want to help me, to really want to help me. And I used their advice. So that's a little learning that I had also.
I love it. The other thing I want to give you credit for is, in the same vein as reaching out for help, talking to advisors, is, even at your highest end scale, even all the way up through the exit, you were very good about, initially monthly, but then, quarterly sending updates and being transparent about the KPIs. You would include the CPA, and, you could see how it's increasing, sharing the revenue, sharing the good and the bad. So I want to give you credit for that. And, it's definitely
Yeah.
the best practice that we advise.
Yeah, I got that from you guys, the investor updates and how
Yeah.
to be honest in those investor updates. Yeah, and I stuck to them.
Nice.
They were great.
So we mentioned Daniel went through Generator Milwaukee 2026. It was a cool cohort, a lot of interesting personalities. Tell us more about your Generator experience, and in particular, how would you say the accelerator helped you the most?
First of all, I love Milwaukee. First of all, let's start with the randomness of living in Milwaukee because I'm from LA. I'm from California. I'd never really been out to the Midwest before. And so one of the funny things was when I got the outreach, it was like, hey, this is going to be in Milwaukee. I was like, Milwaukee? I don't know anything about Milwaukee. I ended up loving Milwaukee so much. So nothing to do with generator. Fucking way to go, Wisconsin. So um, I thought it was really, really, really cool. I don't know what generators like these days. So I don't know if this is helpful to you, Troy, or not, but I'm just going to be honest. Like, I had the really good fortune of being able to develop a relationship with Joe and Troy while they were there, because it was still kind of even in the early days of Generator. And but everybody that was on, in the staff that supported them were always there to answer the questions that I had. So to Generator's credit, what you created was like this infrastructure. And basically you could choose to tap in or you could choose not to. And that's kind of on you. Like Generator is going to give you the opportunity to say, hey, we can involve you in this mentor swarm and you can meet these advisors and mentors, but like that's on you whether or not you want to develop and steward those relationships. They're not going to like force you, nor can they like make it happen for you. And that is life, right? That's just life. That's entrepreneurship. Like either you grab it and you make it happen or you don't, but you don't have to like sit there and like make yourself feel bad if you don't. I didn't come in every single day into what was that's the space in the fifth ward. What do you guys call it? Like the incubator space. What was that?
Yeah, Ward 4.
Ward 4, Ward 4, Ward 4. Is that still around?
Yeah, we're still there.
It's the best. But like I tried to be there. I tried to show up. I tried to take advantage of the mentors forum. I tried to take advantage of you guys and getting to know you all. And actually some other really cool things happened there. I hired my first employee from what was it? The Code Academy that was
Yeah, Dev Code Camp. Good
Dev
memory.
Code Camp happened. By the way, there was another organization that shared the floor, and I needed like my first kind of like head of customer service because I was getting like 150 Gmails inbox a day responding to customers, and I actually kind of recruited and networked and actually hired my first employee on that floor. So there was a lot that I gained from it and tried to take advantage from it. But ultimately, and also I think it was they were a major part of my round, like that $1 million that I ended up raising. The lead in it was someone closely affiliated, an organization closely affiliated with Generator. Generator themselves were investors in my round. A few folks from the Mentor Swarm were investors in my round. Like Chicago and Wisconsin ended up having like a pretty major presence within my seed round. So it's just like the impact across the board is actually kind of nuts in retrospect. But the biggest thing that I got from it, I'll never forget it, was when like me, Joe, and Troy, you had this for everybody at the time. There was like these standing weekly meetings where like you would come in to your office and we would walk through company's performance and kind of what the marketing plan was. And I remember a few of those sessions where you took out the whiteboard and you started like walking through the unit economics and like started walking me through the subscription flow of my website and like kind of what the step-by-step was. And by the way, through you guys, I hired my very first website designer. I don't know if you
Oh, yeah, Andre. I remember.
Andre
Yeah,
was awesome. And that was like our website for like 3 years until
I love that.
so just the impact was amazing, but it's on you to choose kind of like what you want to take from it. And for some people, just even being there because they were working from home or they were working remotely, and to be a generator, just have a place to come to every day and knowing that like there was a support system in place, that was enough for them to like feel motivated to show up to work every day. But I would encourage you to kind of lean in and take advantage of the resources that are there.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good segue. My next question is, what advice do you have for entrepreneurs and founders that are considering an accelerator program? And, one of them that I hear you say that totally agree with is, so much of life is just showing up and engaging in the opportunities provided to you, but in particular, showing up in person. I thought that had a big impact. But what would you say, Daniel, is, your advice to entrepreneurs and founders considering an accelerator?
Yeah, and the point of it to accelerate a company is to first of all already have a company that has something going for it, right? So you want to join an accelerator, I think, at the right point and the trajectory of growth in your company, which is usually very early, um, potentially having shown either some traction, some response from a product market fit perspective, or just kind of a pretty dialed in plan as like how you want to execute. Because an accelerator program doesn't work in that I show up just by being there and all of a sudden my business accelerates. It's more like I have this little foundation that I'm trying to build. And what I want to do is kind of place it in a little bit of fuel so that there's like some folks and some infrastructure around me with me as its leader really pushing everything forward. But you got to have something there that's really worth pushing. So my advice is kind of look where you are in these early days of growing your company. Maybe you've been doing it for a year or two, but you realize like you're kind of hitting like a wall. Now it's time to go a lot further. So it doesn't have to be new from the perspective as I just started my business, but it's more about like, where are you in its journey? Do you have something that you've already built that has some juice and you just need a little bit of finesse and guiding and pushing and knowledge and just some infrastructure around you to kind of really build you to kind of go to that next level. And I think that that is the greatest purpose of an accelerator. But just because you joined one doesn't mean it's going to like kick off for you, right? And so you got to be willing to do the real heavy lifting. It's your baby. So it's
I
up to
love it.
you what happens.
All right, the last question I got, tell us about your favorite part of the program, or perhaps the favorite connection that you made, either before, or during, or after Generator.
I mean, all those guys and all those gals that I became very close with. So I made friends, like
Yeah,
very real friends. And we've all been able to stay very close with one another. We have like a WhatsApp thread that we all keep in touch with one another. We follow each other's businesses along the way. We see each other when we can. So there's the friendship element. I've developed a close friendship with Joe and Troy, and that's meant a lot to me. So the relationships was the most important part of what I got from it. And it felt like it's something like really magical. It's almost like going back to school, like going back to grad school. I went to grad school, or like going to something that feels far away for me because I was from California. So like kind of taking a leap and going into like a area that I didn't know in a city that I didn't know and kind of taking a leap of faith, but being surrounded by like-minded people who all were basically trying to achieve the same goal, right? Like everybody was there for the same purpose. It really did feel like going back in a way to school. And that's a really beautiful thing because it allows you in a way to kind of let go a little bit of like the responsibilities and the heaviness of everything that is based at home. I mean, some people had to do remote and that is what it is. And I totally get it because they had family responsibilities that didn't allow them otherwise. But for me, the experience of being able to go to Milwaukee, be in this area that I'd never been to before, dedicate, I don't know, what was it, 6 weeks or 2 to 3 months? I don't remember how long the program was, more than
yeah,
6 weeks,
12 weeks.
12 weeks.
Yeah,
And then make all these new friends with a bunch of like-minded people and just be like solely focused on this one thing. It was super magical. It was really magical. I would encourage many companies to look into going into an accelerator program at the right time for themselves.
I love it. Well, this
Yeah.
was magical.
I think that,
Well,
and one other thing I want to say is there was always like this little bit of like fun because one of the purposes of an accelerator program is to help you when it's all said and done with fundraising, right? And so I think you really want to be thoughtful about, how do I lean into this network to help me fundraise? How much do I really want and need? And for some people it was like that's my goal. Like a lot of people I remember some of the other folks in the cohort like walked into the accelerator program with like their goal of being here is like, I have to use this experience to ultimately end with like raising a lot of money for my company. And I think that that is a super important goal for certain companies where that really needs to become a priority. But it's a little bit of what part kind of comes first? Is it like I'm walking in because I need to raise money, and so like I'll do whatever I need to do to get there, or is it I'm walking into this experience of being in an accelerator to learn as much as I can, to apply myself as hard as I can, to network as best as I can, to get advisors, to get mentors, and like within this 12 weeks, grow the hell out of my business. And if I'm lucky, by the end, the fundraising becomes the natural extension of what that journey was about, which I think is the way it landed for me.
And he had a great ending. So, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Daniel had a tremendous exit acquired by Mars. Had a great time working for a number of years with Mars for years after the acquisition, and now is just living an awesome life. I'll also say Daniel's a limited partner. He's an investor in gener8tor, so we appreciate his follow-on investment and really bringing that full circle. But Daniel, thank you so much for the time, and just congratulations on all the success.
I really appreciate it, man. Thank you so much, Troy. I love you guys.